I'm interviewing different people that have studied and promoted the works of Maria Valtorta. So here is an interview with Brother Rick Campa, who has done a whole index on her work. And again, you will find all of her works in the links in my video. God bless you. Take care. Bye bye. So I have the pleasure today to be joined by Brother Richard, who's a member of the Companions of Christ the Lamb and has compiled a very fascinating index of scriptural references on Maria Valtorta's epic work. But before we start on that, Brother Richard, do you just want to give us a brief update on who the Companions of the Lamb is and how you discovered Maria Valtorta, and then we'll cover the work that you've been doing.
Okay, by the way, if I can say this, I usually go by Brother Rick, so Richard is
Brilliant.
fine. Also, the last name is Campa without the S. Anyway, well, good. I'm glad to be here. Now, you said you wanted to know about, my community or how I discovered CCL. I guess they're kind of tied in together. I'm a cradle Catholic, Catholic high school, grade school, University of Notre Dame. I actually have a bachelor's in theology. But that was back in 72, difficult time, cultural revolution, and so on. And so I stopped going to church after college. I have a law degree too. So I went to law school, but basically became a non-practicing Catholic. And I would say that while I had had a brief conversion experience through the charismatic movement in college, that's why I switched my degree to theology. I was a math major, but since I was going to law school, it really didn't matter. Um, I thought they were going to make me a saint, but it turns out most of what theology that's taught out there is very rationalistic, sort of like the Bible isn't historical as we know it. It was written second or third generation after the fact when all the apostles are dead, which was not church tradition, and I don't believe it's true, but that's called the Markan primacy or the primacy of Mark. Back then we called it the Markan hypothesis. But since they demythologize scripture, then it seemed that well, if it's not true, even though they said Spirit of God is there, well, we're not really sure. So as I said, I sort of became non-practicing probably for about 15 years. Then I was starting to study wilderness. I discovered a guy in 88. And while I was there, I met a priest, the founder of our community. And he was taking classes, the wilderness classes I was taking in New Jersey. And we took a class together in 88, and we got along well because I was, again, a cradle Catholic, altar boy, choir boy, all that stuff. And he was there. And in 89, we got together. And it was shortly after 89 that he got a call. Someone got one of the women that got prophecy, so to speak, told him the Lord wants to know if, the Lord wants to know if you'd form a religious community. The original thing was he wants to know if you do a special work for him. And he said, sure, whatever the Lord wants, thinking I'll be probably put in charge of the archdiocese and funding appeal or something. He's from Detroit. But as it is, the next week she says, I think I know what the work is. He said, what is it? He says, the Lord wants you to form a religious community. And his initial response was, oh my goodness. Those aren't usually easy. But his next response is, I know what this is going to be about. It's going to be about combining mystical theology, which he had always been interested in, that wasn't always taught, and a closeness to the earth. So it just formulated, and unfortunately, he said, I thought of you right away. I'm in Texas, he's in Michigan, but I didn't have your address. So I said, Lord, you got to bring us together. And the next year, 1990, took a scout class together. And he asked me if I had heard of Medjugorje. And I had, believe it or not, in the early 80s, but I tended to dismiss it because we were taught in that rational system to ignore private revelation and that, that stuff is usually not true. So I kind of ignored it. I couldn't figure out why these kids would be claiming to see the Blessed Mother. But he said, I'm going to send you a book and a videotape on that. And 1 week later, there it was in the mail. And I looked at it and I realized it was true, at least to my satisfaction. I didn't realize the apparitions were ongoing. They hooked the kids up to lie detectors, poked them with needles, would touch their eyeballs with lint. So clearly something supernatural was going on. I mean, one of the kids was 10, that you couldn't. And of course, the messages are very good, very sound. So it was like, so I contacted a priest, and 1 week later, did my first confession in probably 15 years, and I was back in the church. And he didn't tell me about the community, but it was shortly thereafter that I all of a sudden realized maybe I had a religious vocation. I had never gotten married. I'd been in relationships. I was now 36. It was like, oh, maybe that's why I was never married. So I prayed about it, and finally I said, well, I couldn't get anything from the Lord, but I finally wrote him back and just told him, by the way, I'm back in the church. Thank you for the Medjugorje books. And I want you to know I'm thinking of pursuing a religious vocation, maybe even applying to the Franciscans, which I had done, but it didn't work out well. They didn't want anything to do with private revelation, even though Medjugorje is a Franciscan parish. So, but the good thing is I got a letter back from him 1 week later saying, boy, I was glad to hear from you. And I thought you might have a vocation, but I wanted you to discern that for yourself. And now that you have, let me tell you, I'm forming a community, and it's going to combine wilderness with Catholicism. And that was the first sign I was looking at as to where the Lord might want me, because I had studied all that wilderness. And when I came back in the church, I kind of put it up, but I was curious, why did I go through that? Well, either way, I came up a few weeks later. The community was just forming, about a year old. I think there was only about 5 members in it. So he said, come on up and meet the people. I took a bus up to Michigan, met him. One of the women that supposedly got prophecy said, yeah, the Lord says this is where he wants you. And I said, sounds good, I'm in. It took me about 6 months to work my way up, but I came up in 91. I've been with him ever since. So 34 years. And so that's how I came back in the church, through Medjugorje, through Father Jack. That's my community. In answer to how I discovered Poem of the Man God, it was a few weeks after I was in San Antonio that I was, back converting, going now to daily mass as Medjugorje had asked, and going to St. Paul's bookstore. One day I went there and saw a book saying Jesus died in India. Of course, kind of ridiculous, but I opened it up and they claimed that he died in India. He didn't die, and they had a diary of his. So, boy, it's weird stuff, ridiculous. But about a couple of weeks later, I found another book called The Diary of Jesus. And I thought, is this that diary they claimed? So I opened it up, but it wasn't. It's Alagnir's book, The Diary of Jesus, on Poem of the Man God. Very well done. He was a graduate of the French Polytechnic Institute, and he was trying to date the Gospels, and he claimed that someone had given him the work, Poem of the Man God. So he decided to try to compare the chronology there with the chronology he had. And he said if it didn't match, that didn't necessarily mean it wasn't true. There's a lot of reasons, but he said I found it matched perfectly. So I'm in the bookstore reading this, and I'm thinking, by the way, meanwhile, I had discovered Maria Valtorta's Mystical City of God and had read the first volume of that, so I was already familiar with her. So I asked the nun, where can I get this book? Thinking she'd have to order it overseas or something. And she goes, yeah, it's right on our shelf right there, Oh, there it is, Poem of the Man God. Not sure if it was true or not, because these things may not be, but it's like, well, I guess I'll buy volume 1. It was $35 at a time, which was at minimum wage. I'm now just typing for a living. That's what I had done. It's almost a day's page, but I bought 1 volume and read it on the way home on the bus. I had sold my car at that time. I was just living kind of in poverty, but I was convinced when I got home, this is authentic. I'm not saying I think I know authentic theology. cradle Catholic and so on. I do have a bachelor's in theology. I can also tell good writing, of a law degree. So I think I know what's good or not. And I was convinced. Came back the next day, said, in case everything falls apart, I want the other 4 volumes, and spent the next year reading it as I, went to my daily work, sometimes up to 2 or 3 in the morning. But it was great. And so I loved it and found it fascinating in every way, including the theology was very, very good. And I don't say this lightly. As I said, I'm somewhat critical by nature. If I had seen any shady stuff or bad writing, I think I would have noticed it. So that was it. And when Father Jack had sent me the Medjugorje stuff several weeks earlier or whatever, he said, "There's another book I want to send you, but I don't want to overwhelm you." So after I'd been in the community, I was now here. I've been here about a year. I said, "By the way, was that book Poem of the Man God?" He goes, "Yeah, I wanted to send it to you, but so it turns out I discovered it on my own." And he likes it too. He's read it 3 times cover to cover. So anyway, that was my introduction to it. Thanks to Alagnir's Diary of Jesus, one of those coincidences. So very good. I enjoy Poem of the Man God. I liked Maria Valtorta, not Mary of
Maria
Agreda.
Gre-
I might have
yes.
misstated that. Sorry, Mary of Agreda's Mystical City of God. But after reading Poem, I couldn't go back to that. I'm not saying that isn't authentic. Some of the details don't match up, which is common in private revelation. But hers was a little more some background stuff, like angels going between Mary and Jesus and so on. There's no way I have to take her word for it. The teachings are phenomenal in there. But once I got a hold of Poem, I couldn't really go back. So I've enjoyed Poem ever since, and was blessed to be able to work on that index starting about 7 or 8 years ago. The Lord opened that opportunity after many, many years. So glad to be able to help people enjoy that and,
Yeah.
get some fruit from it. So, okay, that's my story.
Yeah. And I'm just going to share that index with people so that people understand. Let me share. So I came across your name, Brother Rick, when I was on the valtorta.com.au website. And then there's an index of gospel passages, characters, towns in the gospel as revealed to me. So this is your index. And I was fascinated as I read through it, the I mean the detail in here about the various references in the gospel. You reference the 2 editions of the poem, and then the newer edition as well. So anybody that has either or editions of the work can reference them here. So as people may not be aware, there's two. You read the first translation. There's been a second translation, and not too distant future there will be a third translation of the work. So, but at least we can reference the 2 editions here, and many people probably not aware how much scripture or how much of the gospel is contained in the work. It's just saturated everywhere, the whole work, and it's quite amazing. And even in the Acts of the Apostles, you're also referencing it there. And then you did the part 2 as well, which is formatted to allow a person who is reading the gospel or the poem or has a particular volume or chapter in mind to locate it in the New Testament, and you've done that as well. How long did it take you to do all of this work? Because it's a mammoth task that you've set yourself. What was the time scale for all of this?
Actually, it's not as long as you would think. I took a sabbatical in, I believe, 2017 after being with the community many years, and I just had to take a break. And I had long wanted to do a reference which matched the gospel passages to poem. And that was one weak point I thought that was there. I know that there are places where they do the Sunday Gospels and match it and so on, but let's just say you heard today's gospel. where is that in poem? Well, there's 5 volumes, and people used to occasionally ask me if I could find it. And um, in my so I had tried to, but Alec was the main key to that. He had done a lot of the gospel passages, references it in that book, The Diary of Jesus. So while I was on sabbatical, I was kind of half working on it, it seemed. But it was, the Lord sort of said, if you don't do it now, it's never going to get done. I think I was 4.5 months. So I asked my sister if she had a computer, and I began to take what he had down. And of course, you do the cross references to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So you flush that out as much as you can. Very difficult to find a copy of Poem of the Man God in San Antonio. Just nobody has it, but I was able to locate one at the one of the theological libraries. I forgot which one it was, but the Oblates, the Library of the Oblates. So as I began to flush it out with some time, and I was also helping to take care of my mom, so it worked out. I had siblings helping. I was able to get most of the gospel passages there through combination of Alec and my own running into it, and then pretty soon I had the spreadsheets and so on. But there were some passages I just couldn't find. And by the way, my idea of doing this was also to share it with my community members, because almost everyone in our community has read a poem. But again, they read it, they think it's good, but no one has an easy way to find gospel passages. So there were just, like where he said, tell the children, don't tell them not to come to me and so on. I found that in several places, but never in the Well, what happened was then I just assumed that's the best I'm going to do. And then I had to buy the gospel as revealed to me, because I all of a sudden discovered those chapter numbers didn't match. I called the guy who sold it and I said, what's your chapter reference for the Holy Spirit descent? And it was 4 chapters off. So I said, well, I'm just going to have to buy it, $300 and something. But, and, then I was able, and when I opened it, I realized they had a lot of gospel references in their chapters. So at first I thought, oh boy, it looks like I did something that was already done. But it was good, though. I would say there's differences between the two of us. But in all the places I found differences, about half the time I realized they were right. My reference was wrong. But half the time, I hate to say this, I think I'm correct and their references were wrong. But in there, I found the other 5%. I had about 95%. So now I had just about 100%. And at that point, I realized, boy, you've got a complete reference here. So I put that together in a book. So anyway, to answer your question, it took about 4 months, 4.5 months. Then I had to put it in a booklet form. And I did. And then I tried to sell it on Amazon, but there's really no interest in that. Of course, I can't really advertise. And I probably sold about 20 copies over 2 years. But then what happened was a few years later, now I'm down for another reason there. Our founder, Father Jack, asked me, can you do an index of the characters, not just the gospel passages? And I said, oh boy, you don't know how big an undertaking that would be, where they are. Because he said a lot of times I get to the end of and I can't remember who these characters are there.
Yes.
So I finally had time and I did that. And then while I was at it, I had the map from Alagnir and realized most people don't have that, because when you buy the book now, that map usually doesn't come with it. I don't use the internet, by the way, so that's why I wasn't familiar with all the stuff that was on valtorta.com.au. I realize now there was a map, a guy that has it. But I turned that into a map, so altogether, I combined my earlier index of gospel passages, with the index of characters and a map of the towns that he visited. So that took another year or so, or I had to reread it from beginning to end and match all the characters. And so I don't know how long that took, maybe a year and a half or whatever. And then I had it done, and this time I realized there's no point in selling it on Amazon because no one's ever going to look at it. So I turned it as best I could, and I had heard about, I forgot how I knew about, well, Valtorta.com, Catherine Loft's website. So I sent it to her thinking, boy, I hope she publishes or puts it on her website because otherwise I don't know how else to distribute it. And fortunately, she was very gracious enough to put it in there. And that's what finally got me, uh, to be able to share it with people. And hopefully, I think there's some benefit there. So yeah, I don't, again, I don't know how long, maybe a couple of years or who knows how long to put all that stuff together. But that's how it came together.
Yeah, it's amazing. As I've started investigating the work of Maria Valtorta, you're not the only religious community that has studied her. You have, I've encountered a few others, and it's interesting. Mother Teresa used to carry around her with her one of those 5 volumes, those original 5 volumes that you read back in the day. She used to carry one of them each time, and we have a signed letter from one of the spiritual directors that ministered that he witnessed that. So it's amazing to see how many communities are using her works in the church.
Yes, and I would again. Actually, I'm sure it promoted this Life of Christ by that was put out, I think, at 21 by Stephen Austin, I think, is the main one, and Father Polari talks about Mother Teresa and the saints, and also about the index of forbidden books and what the current status of that was. So that was a great help because he pointed out how many. I mean, there was a two blesseds and a saint, so they were big promoters of it, and that's it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah,
So, and they helped me. I eventually did write an introduction in my work, as you know, where I dealt with that question of the licitness of Maria Valtorta. You hate to do it, but you can't get away from it because there is some attack on it, as there is on Medjugorje or anything else. Uh, yeah, that's you're right. Mother Teresa used to have it. This uh, Maria Inez Arias, creator of 35 convents and so on. She had the work in Italian and Spanish given all her house. Gabriel Alegre, Blessed Gabriel Alegre, who's was a priest, and he was a big promoter of it, and he was a scriptural exegete, so I think he would know what he's talking about. So that's there, and I write a lot of that in my introduction. Of course, if you go to valtorta.com.au, there's a lot of other articles trying to defend or
yeah,
explain some of the objections. So, yeah, you're right. Mother Teresa was one of them. And one of the it used to be on the index, as you know. That index was I don't know how you would call it, suppressed, abolished, and so on. So the only thing that index no longer has any church authority in terms of ecclesiastical penalty. It's sometimes misunderstood, but when they published that thing, notification that suppressed the index, they mentioned that the index of forbidden books, I'd have to read it from, retains its moral force in as much as the people are reminded of the demands of natural law in this area, which is that you should not read something contrary to faith or morals. But outside of that, again, it reiterates there's no ecclesiastical penalties, nothing from the church that would forbid you. But and then sometimes people misquote that. I hate to say, but Cardinal Ratzinger did. They'll just say, well, the Vatican said it retains its moral force. That's only part of the statement. The second part said, in as much as the faithful are reminded of the demands of natural law in this area, which is you should not read something contrary to faith and morals. So that is the current status, natural law. And when you have Mother Teresa and several blesseds, Padre Pio, Father Gabriel Roschini, the top Mariologist of the 20th century, when all these guys are supporting it, that's kind of a good argument that there probably is not something contrary to faith or morals. I've never found it. Some of the objections I've read are pretty spurious or skimpy. Um, and I don't think anyone has. So the point is, you can read it,
Yeah.
and that the index has no binding moral force beyond the fact that it just reminds people that you shouldn't read anything contrary to faith or morals. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's important to note on that because in France, they in the 1990s they were promoting the book on a major French publication, and Cardinal Ratzinger wrote to them to stop publishing the book or stop promoting her works. And a year later, Cardinal Ratzinger wrote back and saying, "Look, you can continue to do what you're doing because if the work had anything in it against faith and morals, they wouldn't be giving imprimaturs to it in India and in other countries, and they certainly wouldn't be selling it in the various bookstores where you find it around the Catholic bookstores where you find it around the world. Her works are widely available in different places. So I think we have, trying to emphasize this that you have Pope Pius XII who promoted it. You have his secretary, Pope Paul VI, who bought these works for his seminary in Milan. You have Pope Francis, who last year encouraged us to promote the literary works of Maria Valtorta. He sent a letter, the end of last year, to the Maria Valtorta Foundation. And so we're working within the framework of the church to promote this work with love, because there is a wealth of knowledge in there that can help people as they journey on their spiritual life.
oh, good. I mean, I didn't know about Francis, Pope Francis promoting that, but yeah, it's so do we want to get into the notification of February of this year? It came from the Vatican.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, that is again,
well,
that hasn't prohibited us either reading it or promoting it either. Again, they didn't say that we couldn't speak
right.
about
And I think, yeah, and I think some people got confused, but it's the statement just says they're reiterating that you can't consider it supernatural. And I think the operative, well, let's put it this way: under Paul the Sixth, and again, most people don't know this, so they can read that and be thrown for a loop, like, well, what's going on here? Has this been banned? Under Paul the Sixth in 1978, he had put out the norms for handling private revelation, and I'm not sure the exact title, and apparitions. And in those norms, he talked about investigating it, and there were only two possibilities at that time. They wanted investigated you either to declare that it was supernatural, or you were to declare that it was not supernatural. The problem is, those are two big declarations, and the church basically didn't do much of declaring one or the other. And there are some new norms that just came out last year by Pope Francis in 2024. And again, I have the title here. Actually, the norms for proceeding in discernment of alleged spiritual phenomena. And this now supersedes the other one. But let's get back to the other one. There were only two, either that was found good or not good. But in this new one, they noted that that was such a high criteria both ways that since 1950, despite hundreds of spiritual phenomena, if not more, the Vatican had only made 6 declarations of one or the other. That this was, like Rwanda, I think they decided it was. There was one they condemned. But even when they decided it was, they did not want their name attached to it. And this was all told in the new norms, the introduction. They would say, we're going to approve it, but don't mention us in that. So it was a heavy bar because the Vatican felt if we approve it, what is that saying? You know, you got to believe it by faith as an article of faith. Um, and of course, condemning it is also a serious charge. So basically, no one was doing anything. with these hundreds. And so they came up with this third category that you can't consider it, that it is not, you cannot consider it supernatural, meaning we didn't make that declaration. Of course, you cannot officially consider it not supernatural because the church never decided there. So there was this big chasm, and things weren't getting decided. So I would recommend if people read this new norm, it's a very good document, and it's like it's now the normative thing and the spiritual phenomenon, and it's you might. I was thinking you could say there's a new sheriff in town. So let's look at the new norms here. And it's quite well done. They note the problems, and they said something else has to be done because none of it was getting decided. So here people are going decades without anyone saying it is supernatural or it isn't, because the Vatican didn't want to do it. And he said, we needed something better. And they tried some things. And finally, someone came up with the idea of, why don't we not declare it supernatural, but just give it a nihil obstat. Just say there's nothing contrary to faith or morals. And when that was presented to Francis, according to the introduction, he agreed that was the thing. And so they decided that, and they stay right, it says right out, it says about 6 times, so it is not, let me see what it says here. It is not to be expected that they will declare anything supernatural. In fact, that is not the point, and they're basically not going to do it. They want to get out of that business. Now, they do say the Pope can at any time step in on his own power, but basically, the norm said from now on, we will just say there's nothing contrary to faith or morals. We're not going to get into whether it is or is not supernatural, because that is a heavy burden. And then there's some other things. Well, it's nothing contrary, but there's some things you got to watch. And then the final one, which says it's not supernatural, it said instead of just leaving it at that, he said, and you must have concrete facts and evidence to back it up, such as the visionary admitting she lied, or 2 or 3 witnesses coming forth and saying there was a fraud. So he didn't want that to be used just because somebody doesn't like, she's just a blabbermouth. We're going to declare it not supernatural. So so nowadays they're not going to get into that. It's just that there's nothing contrary to faith or morals, which is the natural law anyway. You can keep reading it, and then personally, they quote Ratzinger saying several times, proceed with normal human prudence. And prudence would, if you read Maria, not only Poem of the Man God, but Mary of Agritas, yeah, it's pretty good, but, and it's good. And I think you could honestly say, I think this is from the Lord. But no one should stand up and say, I hereby declare it's from the Lord, and you have to believe it, which I think was, which is not true. And that's why I think that February 25th or 2025 said, look, you cannot say this is supernatural. I mean, you can hold that privately, but the church has not declared that. So you cannot say it. And, I would say, don't worry about it. As you said, we can still read it, let it go. And some people try to argue it is supernatural and so on. We don't need to get into that argument. And the church is never going to go there according to this. It's a whole new set of rules, and I think it's quite good, almost based on St. Paul's, test every spirit, keep what's good and discard what's evil. Not wait for the church to make an all-in or all-out declaration. There's just too many. There's prophecies, there's gift of prophecies. So proceed with, that's the sense of the faithful. And Paul VI mentioned the sense of the faithful when he dissolved the index of forbidden books. We shouldn't be in a position of banning every private revelation until we absolutely determine it's supernatural. That's living out of fear, and he mentioned that. There's no fear in love. So since Paul VI, the operative norm is, as long as there's nothing, if there's something contrary to faith or morals, you shouldn't be reading it. But if there isn't, then okay, and proceed with with human faith or human prudence. But so whenever I talk about Poem of the Man God, as you saw in my introduction, I always just say um, she allegedly received these visions, or she wrote down what she believed to be um, visions that she saw. But yeah, that's good enough. And you let the people decide, and I trust the people and trust in the sense of the faithful. Um, and so on. Like Pius XII said, just publish it as is. Those who read it will understand. I don't have to say it's supernatural. And I don't think the church will ever say it's not supernatural, because the new norms specifically state, in order to make that statement, you've got to have concrete evidence, not not just some, you don't like the way the woman talks or something. So there's going to have to be evidence of fraud. So I give Francis credit and the people, for a very well done document that's putting that where it should be. There's too many prophetic things coming out, so we couldn't judge them all. It would take forever. So that's my feeling. I don't know if
Yeah. I was of the same opinion when I saw that document on the change of discernment. I thought it was a very, very prudent way of proceeding, because, as you said, to say something is 100% of supernatural origin, to say that for about Maria Valtorta's works is nearly like saying you have to believe this now. And the church is always being extremely prudent and careful when it makes any such pronouncements. So the what Cardinal Fernandez published this year about Maria Valtorta isn't anything strange. He's just saying, look, you cannot consider it of supernatural origin, but at the same time, he never said you cannot read her. And Pope Francis, when he asked us to promote her, he specifically says he encourages us to promote the literary works of Maria Valtorta without making any approval of a supernatural origin. And the literary works of Maria Valtorta have a lot of value for the church, as Pope Pius XII saw, and many others. And I think she really can draw us into this mystery. Well, Maria Valtorta, what she's wrote, draws us into this mystery of the divine in an incredible way. And again, I'm just analyzing all of the different people that have touched on her, like yourself and many others, that can see a great value if we promote her works within the framework of what the church is allowing us to do, because they haven't banned us from doing this work. They're actually promoting us, but in the framework that they've given us to do this.
There's a couple of interesting similarities between this and what happened in the New Testament. In Poem of the Man God, I don't know whether you've actually read the whole thing, but you remember there was a scene there where there was a fire. Jesus and the apostles came upon a hill, and they could see a bright light, and it turns out it was a bog. It was on fire. And the woodsmen there were vainly trying to put it out, but they couldn't. It was too uncontrolled. And so Jesus is just, and their homes are about to be engulfed, everything, and he's just smiling, looking at them. And I think, I don't know, anyway, someone asked him, why are you smiling? Are you smiling at this? He said, no, I'm smiling because I see an analogy here of what's going to happen with my church. People in vain are going to try to pull it out. But once it gets started, it's not going to be able to put out. And by the way, of course, he did put it out. They didn't even know he was there. But after he put it out, one of the guys saying, I'm telling you, it's got to be him. He's the only one that could do this. And, then they realize it is him. I feel that way about Maria Valtorta. I think it's of the Lord. And I don't think once it got out to a certain point, and if they were going to suppress it, they would have had to have done it right from the beginning. And it's too late, and it's of the Lord. And now you get back to what Gamaliel told them when they tried to stop the apostles. He said, my advice is just leave them alone. If it's of human origin, it will die on its own. But if it's not, you're not going to be able to stop it. And you may find yourself fighting against God. Um, if this was of human origin and shoddy writing, it would not have Mother Teresa or the millions of faithful doing it. But if you try to put it out and it's not of human origin, you might find yourself fighting a hopeless battle like these people trying to stop the bog or people trying to stop the church throughout centuries. So I'm just happy that the more it gets out, I believe it's of the Lord, and you won't be able to stop it. And now let's speaking of things being of the Lord. I wrote an article recently for our newsletter, quarterly newsletter, and I mentioned, the Spirit moves in many places: apostles, prophets, teachers, administrators, and so on. So God works in many. He's working in you when you do your podcast, hopefully He's working in me sometimes. That doesn't mean we're all 100%, God's word. Um, but So I think he's working in Maria Valtorta. It doesn't have to be a big thing. We're not saying, God, this is scriptural or canon and so on, nor does it have, and I think that's what Francis was trying to get to. We don't need to declare this. Let the Spirit move. And in fact, the other thing they quoted him as saying, the way you know if something's of the Spirit is to take it in prayer. Go quietly and take it in prayer. That's how I discerned it was good. That's the best way. And if people would quietly take it in prayer, we don't need to argue about it. We don't need to have the church authorities declare it supernatural, just as long as they haven't banned it. But either way, let's get back. The Lord works through many ways, and even just through administrators. So it's possible to look and say, I see the Lord working in you. Of course, in the next moment, He might not be working in you if you're getting angry at someone, but God works. So if nothing else, I think He's working through Maria Valtorta's works. Take what's good. If you find something you don't like, then say, I don't agree with this. I haven't found anything. I'm still amazed every time I read it. It's like the first time I've read it. But so I think it's gone. It's been published in I don't know how many languages, and so I think it's diffused. I don't think you're going to be able to stop it. And praise God. Padre Pio, I think, once said one day it'll be worldwide. So my humble little opinion.
Yeah. The reason I want to promote it is I started reading it maybe 20 years ago, and because it's such a big, it was 5 volumes then, 10 volumes. It's such a big effort to read everything. I started saying, well, investigating her a bit. And when I saw that, oh, look, there's big question marks around her, I kind of stopped and put her to one side. And it was only during COVID that I came back to read her, and really through a podcast, the dramatized version on YouTube. And it suddenly struck me as somebody is narrating it. I said, God, this is penetrating me in a way I've never seen a writing penetrate me so deep as this work. And then I started reading more, and I bought everything in Italian. I paid over €1,000. I bought all of the works, every single thing that's ever been published, that she's written or even about her, in Italian. I've got all her works, read everything. And I found that this is a true treasure that can help those that are searching for our Lord, because, as you know, the poem is very readable. It's very accessible. It's for the ordinary man and woman of any education, that they can enter into the world that Christ is trying to draw us into, and in a fascinating and unique way, and a beautiful way, in my opinion, like a bird's eye view. And I do hope that people see in us the sincerity, that we're not trying to sell anything to anybody. We're not salesperson here. You're not making any money from this, neither am I. But this is kind of a labor of love for those that have read her, that I think this work can be of immense benefit for the church.
No, I agree. And I think theologically, It's very sound. Of course, the members of our community, one of them has a master's in theology, but all of us are very, lay members and so on. We all read it and we feel it's authentic. Personally, I've been touched so much. Again, I'm not trying to make any overly optimistic. There are times I read, at least in the early years, I would read a poem and I could practically get on the floor on my face, prostrate, like, Lord, you're too much. Not Maria Valtorta is too much. You are too much. What you've revealed. There were teachings that I just thought, this is too much that we could possibly be given this. So, yeah, I find it good. And so hopefully my index would be, if you read something in the gospel and you want to actually find that, you can quickly find it. And it's very good. Don't know what else we could say about it. So,
That's good.
so by the way, how much time do we have on this?
We're coming up to the hour now, so if you're not in a rush, I'd just like to ask you one more question, and then we can wrap it up.
No, sure. I didn't know if we had passed time
No, no,
or
no.
how much time.
Yeah,
I've got all the time you want.
I just want to know how many people are in your community at the moment, and how has it grown since the 1990s?
Uh, Companions of Christ the Lamb, CCL, we call it. It started off again around 1990, 1989 is when he got the call. 1990, I moved up here in 91. So we started growing and we do our wilderness skills, but we're very big on cloud of anointing, of course, the divine office, daily mass, rosary chaplet. So the key for those who want to be members, well, for one thing, what makes our community a little different, anyone who wants to be a member has to be in the local community. Father Jack's idea was to have a community of lay members and men and women religious kind of working together. We don't live together. They all have their own homes, but we, like every Friday, we have our weekly meetings. We have an 1,100-acre retreat center that became we bought that in 95 and became one of our main ministries. And it's a perfect combination of what we believe in. We have this beautiful woods and we can develop it. We're off the grid, though we did finally put in solar lights and so on, but we got daily mass, morning holy hours, evening holy hours, divine office. And people can do that and still walk trails and be in nature. And so our community started growing. And eventually, I think we peaked at about 72 members,
Wow.
maybe 10 religious. And that, I wasn't lost to me of his 72 disciples. And we originally started down in the Detroit area, but moved up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, as they call it, near Paradise, Michigan, actually, is a town near here. And since then, we've had members come and go. We did lose some members a few years back. There was a disagreement. I don't know. I would say now we probably have about 40 members,
Okay.
or 45 members or so. About most of them lay members, about half up here, half still down in the Detroit area. But many of us have been with them 30 years or more. So we believe this is called by the Lord, and we're just going forward with it.
That's amazing.
Running this retreat center. Yeah. So we have people. I will tell you that the retreatants we have coming here end up loving this place. We have tons of groups, youth groups, the Baraga Youth, for several youth groups based in the Diocese of Marquette come here. We just had a Totus Tuus group, which was another thing here. We've had seminarians have done retreats here. So we have tons of retreat business. They almost become family. We see them every year and it just grows. We just had the Troops of St. George here, a father that was here with the Grand Rapids groups, and he brought that's a Catholic scouting group. So it's busy for us that work the staff. We're like, there's a lot of people, but we're growing. So, prophecies say one day we will get bigger. So we see it happening. I think we don't, because we don't have a website, but I think we are on Facebook.
Yes.
Somebody created that, and so it's like Father would normally not have a website, but someone created it. So one of our guys said, "Well, as long as it's out there, we might as well be running it." So you can look us up on that. But again, I'm very thankful that you got a hold of me and we could chat.
Yes.
Um, um, so I don't know any other questions, but we're doing our thing, and just glad Maria Valtorta is still being promoted.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you for the info about Francis,
Yeah.
encouraging that.
Yeah. No, we've got a lot of encouragement, and of course, the Archbishop of Lucca, which is in which Viareggio is found. He's also encouraged more study on her works, and he's come to the Maria Valtorta Foundation conference, and so the church has been very encouraging in guiding us and allowing us to work within the correct framework. So I'm hoping to interview all of the people that have been studying her, promoting her, and just to give these videos out to the world so that the English speaking world can see this treasure that is there, truly a treasure. I'm absolutely convinced, and that people can start to read her with more confidence, and be come familiar with what's in her works.
Well, thank you for promoting her. I would say that my interest in her really lies in Home of the Man God. And by the way, in that, I saw the historicity of the Gospels that had been denied through that rational form criticism that I'd gotten in college. And I said, oh, this is how I believe it could have worked and much better. I realized later I'd bought into a bill of goods with that. But I will tell you personally, and this holds for our community, I think most of our interest is in poem. I've occasionally read some of her other works and prophecy and so on, but um, I'm not that interested. There's a lot of prophecy out there. And again, here's where human prudence. Prophecy, even I respect the Marian movement of priests and so on, but they many times have predicted dates that don't happen and so on. So, as St. Paul says, you keep what's good and discard what's evil. It doesn't all have to be either all good or all bad. Um, so, personally, I haven't gotten into her other stuff. I've looked at it, but it's always taken with a little grain of salt or with some human prudence. And if you're if you're working on that and there's some good stuff, then good. Um, but I like poem, the historicity behind it. People watch The Chosen, and strangely enough, I cannot watch it because I feel I have the history of it. But
Yeah.
Father Jack, our founder, maybe because he's 84 or something, he likes it, and some of our other members all like it. And I say, well, how can you watch that when we read poem? They go, oh, we just ignore it. But a lot of people have told me good stuff about Chosen that they're touched by it. So maybe I'm sure the Lord is working in that too. Is it working in every aspect of it? Maybe not, but if it's good, you keep what's good, and I guess that's Father's boy. They made some good points there. He keeps what's good and ignores what's evil. So um, that's fine. Once I read poem, I pretty much and I just do my thing. Um,
Yeah.
so well,
Well,
okay, Robert. I don't know if there's
thank
anything else.
No, brother Rick Campa, thank you so much for your time and your testimony and your passionate love for Maria Valtorta. And again, I'm going to put a link to your work, which is on valtorta.com.au, so people can go in and download the file. And if they want to contact you, you've put your contact details there. So thank you so much for everything that you've done, and we continue to pray for your community and your work.
Thank you, Robert. And I will continue to pray for you as well.
Okay. God bless.
God bless. It's time to go.
Thank you. Yeah.